Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX is a remake of the original games, bringing in new visuals, redone music, and new mechanics to match the style of the more recent Mystery Dungeon games. Is it enough to be a suitable remake, or even a starting point for those who are curious about the series? Should these people even consider picking these games up at all? Back in 2005, the first games in the Pokémon spin-off series, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, were released, being the first games in the series to have the player turn into a Pokémon, offering a different take on the usual Pokémon formula. Through this, you explore dungeons, meet and recruit new Pokémon to join your team, and discover the many mysteries of the story of these games. Though the original games released to fairly mixed reviews, this didn't stop the developers, Chunsoft, from making more entries, as the series has continued to evolve and change for over a decade, which leads us to today. So I've actually been with Pokemon pretty much my entire life. I've played all of the mainline games, but the first time I got into a Mystery Dungeon game was actually in 2008 with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time. Now I remember this game for its really good story. It had a lot of weird twists, it had fantastic music, and the characters, and the world, and it really got me into the series that I went back to the original games to see how they stood up to me. And I wasn't the biggest fan of those games. They didn't capture that connection that I had with these games. I just didn't feel like it was strong, and considering this is the sequel, it definitely refined a lot of stuff that the original game just did not do whatsoever. So I've mainly just not been playing the series now, up until today. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX is a remake of the original games, bringing in new visuals, redone music, and new mechanics to match the style of the more recent Mystery Dungeon games. Is it enough to be a suitable remake, or even a starting point for those who are curious about the series? Should these people even consider picking these games up at all? Let's get into it. The game starts out with a quirky personality quiz, testing you on actions you would take in a given scenario. This determines what Pokemon you'll be turned into, aiming to add to the immersion that it's you who is in this world. You have turned into a Pokemon, and you must discover why that is and your role in the story. This is perhaps the game's biggest strength, discovering the truth, meeting new Pokemon along the way, and it's all involved enough as to press the player on with the game. It's an interesting take on the world of Pokemon, one that I enjoyed my first time round, though as this is a remake, nothing has really changed from the original games in terms of the main story, but that should be a given with a remake like this. There are key cinematics that are drastically bigger in scale as compared to the originals, adding to a grander narrative from what came before it, though some of the animations used come across as a bit cheap, being used multiple times and at times looking a bit sloppy, though this isn't too distracting from the overall story. What is distracting, however, is the new visual direction for the game. They were aiming for the watercolor look from the awesome looking artwork, and to an extent, it does pull it off. The main issue is that it just doesn't go far enough with the idea, coming across as feeling a bit dated, hiding what are otherwise subpar graphics. Combine this with the low resolution of the game, making it appear as pretty blurry, lower frame rate than before, and slow down in many instances, and you get a look and feel that's not up to par with the original games. And to give the game some credit, in handheld mode it actually looks okay. Since the Switch's screen is so much smaller, the resolution doesn't affect it too much, while I do wish it looked a bit better considering it's the first party Nintendo Switch game in 2020. It looks acceptable, it's just when you play it on the TV is when the resolution decrease really takes into its full effect, and it does distract from the overall experience. The most split aspect of this game, and most Mystery Dungeon games in general, is the gameplay. At its core, it acts as a dungeon crawler, navigating your way through each randomized room to find the stairs that take you to the next floor, battling your way through a horde of Pokemon along the way. There's nothing inherently wrong with the core gameplay itself, it's everything surrounding it that makes it feel monotonous to play through. From the get-go, it all feels fresh, and there's certainly a rhythm to it, but after the first few hours, that all wears off, and the gameplay never truly advances, thus rendering it overly repetitive. There are also some ridiculous balancing issues, with Pokemon being able to destroy you in a single hit, even when they can't be seen on screen. Abilities that are transferred from the mainline Pokemon games are all weirdly buffed, giving the opponents major advantages over you, such as agility now letting the Pokemon attack twice before you can land a single hit, with this being able to be piled on top of itself again to let the Pokemon attack 3, maybe even 4 times before the player can even do anything. At times, it makes the game feel unfair, and if the player doesn't grind to gain levels early on, they're going to have an incredibly tough time that feels totally out of their control, and that lack of agency leads to a lesser experience. In terms of refinements for the game, it's kind of hard to judge because it's trying to keep in line with the more modern Mystery Dungeon games, so there's many different changes, but you will only notice the changes if you played the original Mystery Dungeon game like I did. It was actually pretty refreshing to see as someone who played the original games, so it helped to make the experience more fresh. I'm just unsure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like it's too hard to judge that based on all of these different changes. The most noticeable new refinement is the auto mode, which has the player press the L button and the Pokemon will automatically navigate the dungeon to find the stairs. This takes away from the gameplay, having the player press one button, then when they approach a Pokemon, press the A button to attack, and then pressing the L button again to have the game play by itself. It's true that this is entirely optional, but when it's the fastest way to navigate dungeons and rarely puts the player at a disadvantage, it's hard not to use it, especially if you're struggling in the earlier dungeons. There should be some sort of penalty for using it, such as gaining less rewards on missions or losing stamina more quickly, but there just isn't whatsoever, resulting in a game that barely needs interacting with if your only care is progressing through the story. Outside of the dungeon crawling itself, you set up a rescue team with your newfound partner, completing various side quests for the Pokemon of this world, receiving useful items to aid you in the dungeons. These help the balance of the game, but if you run out of good items, then that balance is lost. If you get defeated in a dungeon, you lose all your money and carried items, so it's key that you bring the right ones. It's with this team that you can also recruit Pokemon that you find in dungeons, having them join your team and being able to control those Pokemon for yourself. But what Pokemon you can recruit depend on their catch rate, with some being difficult to near impossible to obtain. The mechanic is solid, it's just that the random element of it often makes it feel like a chore if you're after a specific Pokemon, though that comes with the package for these kinds of games in general. I think it's fair to say that this game has its fair share of content. If you really enjoy the dungeon crawling aspect, you're gonna dig this game. There's so many different Pokemon you can get. There's a lot more post-story stuff than there is main story stuff, which I find pretty funny, but it's cool for those people who actually enjoy those aspects. It's just for me, the gameplay of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and how it's executed, I just don't think it's too great, and I feel like it's a bit monotonous, and I feel like they could have balanced a lot of the things out to make it more enjoyable, and they could have fleshed out the gameplay a bit more and advanced it further, because right now it just feels too bare bones for my liking. While the game holds a charming story full of great characters, some key cinematics, often at times great music, and an interesting take overall, the gameplay is going to be the biggest deal breaker for many players. These games appeal to a niche audience, and this game is no different. If you either love repetitive gameplay and RNG elements, or you're the most die-hard of Pokemon fans, then I could possibly recommend this game. But for those who are new to the series and are curious as to what it may offer, I simply cannot recommend purchasing this. While I had my fair share of fun with it, I don't think I'll be going back to this game anytime soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Ben, and I hope you enjoyed my review of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX.